I think the reason I've stayed in Christchurch is that there's a huge part of me that feels protective over the city. I feel a responsibility to oversee it in my own way, and I think that stems from the earthquake.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure. You're going to love him. It's Taylor Ruddle!
I went to a school that at the time was known as Unlimited Paying at Tawhiti, now called Al Tawhiti, I believe. And it was not quite a Steiner school, but it was definitely like unique curriculum, I guess you could call it. If you knew what you wanted to do after high school, they kind of just left you to it. It was, I think they still call it self-directed learning. So a lot of us became quite independent, I think, from that. And a big element of doing gigs is you got to put yourself out there. So I think that really contributed to my like work ethic, I guess you could call it today. I actually took a gamble and I decided to study at UB, although it was called NatCore back in those days. And I would say it was a weird start to the year. We only had 2 days before the big earthquake happened. We were actually in class when it happened. I remember first of all thinking this like it didn't feel real. I was like, Christchurch doesn't have earthquakes. And then the other thing is I can still remember seeing the projector bouncing up and down at the front of the classroom. And then a bunch of the ceiling split and we all got under our desks. And the brief 2 days before the earthquake, we were feeling quite metropolitan. We were art students in the middle of the city. You could go and get a coffee in the middle of the day, that kind of thing. But the earthquake put a stop to that. We really got to see our city in quite a vulnerable state. It kind of hit home that life isn't fair. We had a lot of time to kind of sit in the ramifications of the earthquake, especially the younger generation. And at the time, I don't think any of us realized how much of a nationwide impact this earthquake was going to have. I think a lot of people thought it would only take a couple of months to clean up. Even I didn't really understand the scale of it until we exited the UB building. I remember looking over and just seeing a parking building's roof had collapsed onto a bunch of cars. And that was when it was like, oh, yeah, this is real. And then everything went into this state of like limbo. It was kind of panic. Nobody really knew what to do. And I think everyone was looking around for the adult in the room, and some of us realized like we have to be the adult in the room. And then for months after the quakes, everything in the CBD was pretty much cordoned off, or it became the red zone. And anybody who was living or working in the CBD had to readjust everything super quickly. I think that's why I've stayed in Christchurch. Like, being in the entertainment industry is usually about trying to get good enough to leave, but I've always felt quite protective over the city, and I feel like I have a responsibility to stay here and watch over it in my own little way. Of all places, I started stand-up comedy when I was living in Japan, and at the time there wasn't really stand-up comedy in English there. A guy called Ollie Horn, who's a comedian in the UK now, was doing an exchange program, and he wanted to do stand-up in English in Japan. So he started up, I think, the first ever English open mic in the city. It was at a place called CC Cafe. And when Ollie learnt about the design and stuff that I could do, I was obviously a very useful person to have around for him. So we got up and did the first show there, and I haven't really looked back since. I'd have to say definitely opening for Auntie Donna in the town hall a few months ago. That's definitely a highlight of my career. Guys I used to watch like on YouTube and stuff, seeing them in front of me was crazy. And I remember telling my mother about it. I just texted her saying, hey, kind of a big deal. I'm getting to play at the town hall tomorrow. I'm opening for a sketch group called Auntie Donna. And my mum sent back the most mum response ever, which was just, never heard of them, have fun, which was quite a good response. And then a couple of days later, I was kind of checking in with her about the gig, texted her saying it all went well, and I kind of cheekily added, you should feel proud of your kid for playing the town hall. And she sent back the response, "We're proud of you no matter where you go," which was nice to hear because even though my parents might not always understand where my next paycheck's coming from, it's good to know that they support what I do. For a gig, I like to come out here and figure out what I'm going to talk about on the night, to be honest. Um, it's kind of interesting to go back through the notebook and look at set lists from previous shows, maybe think about a joke that landed at one of them that I could try out again tonight. Sometimes I'll leave little crosses or ticks or exclamation points, and that usually gives me an idea of how well the joke works. It's a good feeling to flip the notebook over and see a fresh page though, and think about what jokes I want to tell that night.
With me? Yeah! Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an excellent night full of dangerous criminals, and our first criminal for the criminally hilarious show. It couldn't start off any better. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure. You're going to love him. It's Taylor Ruddle!
I was talking to this lady, and she told me she likes dangerous guys. She likes the bad boy, kind of like this guy here. You like the bad boys, don't you? Sorry, brother, I didn't think they were going to laugh that hard at that, did they? My cowboy nickname is Clint Eats Good, in case you guys wondering. You really like that one? Hell yeah. Where was I? Talking to this lady, and she told me she likes the bad boys. She likes dangerous men. And